Good evening, everyone. I'm Jeff Glore. Calls for a ceasefire continue, though tonight both sides appear to be heading in the opposite direction. Israeli tanks are massing at the Gaza border. Israel briefly did deploy ground troops inside the Gaza Strip this morning, a precursor to a possible ground invasion. In Gaza City, thousands of Palestinians continue fleeing their homes, many taking shelter in United Nations buildings. So far, 167 have died in this latest conflict. More than 1,000 have been hurt. We begin with Holly Williams in Gaza.
In a night of heavy fighting, Israeli airstrikes pummeled the Gaza Strip. 4 Israeli commandos were wounded in a gun battle with Palestinian militants, the first land incursion since this escalation began. And in this house, 18 people were killed, the single deadliest airstrike during Israel's offensive. By early this morning, many American citizens decided to evacuate, while hundreds of other families with no means of escape packed up their belongings and fled to the safety of school buildings. Most came from northern Gaza, where the Israeli military dropped leaflets from the air, warning residents to leave for their own safety. There's security here, but no comfort in a place bracing for an Israeli ground invasion.
Most of these people, they don't want to be here. This is miserable.
Robert Turner is the United Nations representative in Gaza and told us he expects things to get worse.
I don't see that either side are taking steps to de-escalate the situation. And I think if it carries on, then inevitably we will see a ground invasion.
Hossan Jaboa fled here from the town of Beit Lahia with her daughter and 3 grandsons. She showed us what happened to her home the last time tensions flared with Israel 2 years ago. It was demolished by an Israeli airstrike. I thought I'd have a heart attack, she said. We lost everything, even our clothes and furniture. Now I'm worried it could be happening again as we speak. Palestinian militants continued to fire their rockets into southern Israel today. One of them injured a teenage boy, and Jeff, several others were intercepted by Israel's anti-missile defense system.
Holly Williams, thank you. 3 months after the kidnapping of hundreds of Nigerian schoolgirls, the Islamic militant leader behind the abduction surfaced in a video today. Deborah Petta has the details of his defiant and dismissive message.
For 90 days, the families of the over 200 girls had hoped for good news. Instead, their hopes were met with scorn in a new video from Boko Haram leader Abu Bakr Shekau, who mocks the Bring Back Our Girls campaign.
Bring back our girls. Oh, bring back our army.
The social media campaign, #BringBackOurGirls, quickly drew worldwide attention to the plight of the Chibok schoolgirls. But just as quickly it faded from the global spotlight. And in that time, Boko Haram has stepped up its terror campaign. In this video, Shekau also claims responsibility for a June bomb blast in the capital Abuja, which left 21 dead.
While attempts to rescue the over 200 girls appear to have stalled over past weeks, sources close to the negotiations tell News that backdoor channels remain open. They even believe there could be action within days, but they warn against raising expectations, as they say they've been close to a breakthrough on 3 separate occasions, only to have the rescue efforts aborted at the 11th hour.
There was a measure of comfort for the Chibok parents today when they were visited by Malala Yousafzai, the young Pakistani girl shot by the Taliban for also having the audacity to seek an education.
You are really brave parents who have taken this step to speak up for their daughters and to speak up for their right of education. And I'm hopeful that the government would listen to your voice.
So far, the Nigerian government has appeared impotent in the face of the increasingly brazen Boko Haram attacks. Sources tell CBS News they have all but ruled out a military rescue, as it could further endanger the lives of the girls. This means there are few options left for a government facing strong criticism from its own people over their failure to bring the Chibok girls safely home.
Bringing us an exclusive interview with Attorney General Eric Holder. And Pierre, the Attorney General really sounding the alarm about how this conflict between Israel and Hamas and across the Mideast could really intensify the terror threat here at home.
Really is, George. As the conflict intensifies between Israel and Hamas, Holder said he'll be on the lookout for any hint of violence here at home. He said that potential and what is happening in Syria makes for an especially dangerous moment.
We met the Attorney General in London after a series of urgent meetings with European justice ministers about the threat from Syria.
Do they share your sense of urgency about Syria?
There's a great concern about this Syrian foreign fighters problem. We estimate there are about 7,000 of them right now in Syria, coming from Europe, coming from the United States, and great concern about the impact they're having not only there, but the potential impact they could have back in their home countries.
Congressman Rogers of the House Intelligence Committee made a comment recently that he had not seen a situation where there were so many threat streams, so active at one moment, perhaps since 9/11.
No, I think we are at a dangerous time.
Moments later, when we sat down, Holder laid out his concerns in stark, disturbing detail.
You sounded the alarm this week about Americans and Europeans going to Syria. Is this a clear and present danger?
I think it is. In some ways, it's more frightening than anything I think I've seen as Attorney General. 9/11 was something that kind of came out of the blue. This is a situation that we can see developing, and the potential that I see coming out, the negative potential I see coming out of the facts in Syria and Iraq now are quite concerning.
Among the concerns, intelligence that bomb makers from Yemen, those responsible for the 2009 underwear bomb plot, are now in Syria joining forces with the thousands of foreign fighters there.
Is that a particularly nasty mix?
That's a deadly combination where you have people who have the technical know-how along with the people who have this kind of fervor to give their lives in support of a cause that is directed at the United States and directed at its allies. And it's something that gives us really extreme concern.
Sources tell U.S. intelligence suspects Yemeni bomb makers in Syria have designed an explosive device small enough to fit in a laptop computer. It's why the U.S. asked overseas airports to step up security, including requiring some passengers to turn on a laptop or other electronic devices.
We are always constantly monitoring what's going on out there, what known bomb makers are doing, the new techniques that they are trying to employ.
Suffice to say, these security upgrades we're seeing didn't just come out of the blue.
No, these are not things that we just decided it was July, so let's do something new. This is not a test. This is we're doing something in reaction to things that we have detected.
Americans who've gone into Syria and made their way home. Can you give us a sense of how many people that we're talking about that are under various levels of surveillance inside the United States?
Well, I'd say that we have dozens of investigations that are underway. The FBI is on top of these.
And out of Syria, another challenge: ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. They've taken over huge chunks of Iraq, stealing weapons and plundering millions of dollars. They've even allegedly confiscated low-grade radioactive material that could be used for a dirty bomb.
How concerned should Americans at home be about ISIS?
Well, I think at this point, ISIS is a body that is concerned about doing things only in Iraq and in Syria. If they are able to consolidate their gains in that area, I think it's just a matter of time before they start looking outward and start looking at the West and at the United States in particular. So this is something that we have to get on top of and get on top of now.
Is there a sense that there's a resurgence going on now with al-Qaeda?
Well, al-Qaeda core has certainly been diminished, but as we've been saying for some time, other factions of al-Qaeda have become stronger, and now even groups that were once part of al-Qaeda and have now split from them have become strong.
The administration recently scored a victory in the war on terror with the capture of Ahmed Abu Khattala, one of the alleged planners of the assault on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi that killed U.S. Ambassador Chris Stevens and 3 other Americans. But even that has not been without controversy.
Critics have said it took too long to get him. He was having lunch in public, being interviewed by journalists. What say you to that?
Well, I think, that is really an argument I simply don't understand. It's one thing to talk to a reporter and have your face not even shown on camera while you're doing this. A whole other thing to come to the custody of the FBI, the United States military. I don't think that he would have had a cup of coffee with a couple of FBI agents or members of our military.
He's now being held in the U.S. under tight security, facing trial in federal court in Washington.
A number of Republicans on the Hill said he should still be in interrogation on a ship somewhere, military ship. Intelligence should be the priority, and that he should be headed to a military court, not civilian court.
There is not a tension between the way in which we have done this and getting intelligence that can be useful, and then ultimately convicting this person. I think it's time for us to get beyond this point. Now it has become something that I think is purely political and is totally inconsistent with the facts.
The job of national security can be relentless. Not only does Holder have to worry about overseas threats, he also has to worry about homegrown radicals, like the two men who allegedly attacked the Boston Marathon last year.
Is that threat any less serious?
These lone wolves, these homegrown violent extremists are people who keep me up at night as well, trying to monitor them, trying to anticipate what it is that they are going to do. And, you know, the experience that we had in Boston is instructive. It only takes one or two people to really do something horrific.
And Pierre, the Attorney General, you also talked to him about homegrown terrorists who are motivated more by domestic concerns.
Yes, we recently had the case where someone had an assault on a courthouse in Georgia. Also, 2 officers killed near Las Vegas. He said that that is coming back as well, that there may be a resurgence. He said there are a lot of sleepless nights these days.
Okay, Pierre Thomas, thanks very much.
More than 5 million Americans currently have Alzheimer's. That number is expected to increase dramatically in the decades ahead. Today, researchers announced the promising results of a study on a new test to pick up that disease years, if not decades, in advance. And they're looking for the signs in an unusual place, the eye. Don Daler has more.
These bright dots are proteins called beta amyloids, visible in the retina of a patient diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Beta amyloids are typically found in the brain and have been known to be linked to Alzheimer's. Dr. James Galvin is a neurologist at New York University Langone Medical Center.
What makes it unique is that the retina is actually an extension of the brain. And so we think that a lot of the pathology that's occurring in the brain may also be occurring in the retina.
Australian researcher Sean Frost tested 40 people using a liquid form of curcumin, the natural substance that makes curry yellow. Curcumin sticks to beta amyloids, allowing doctors to spot the proteins with a simple eye test. Frost found that the test positively identified 100% of the participants who had Alzheimer's.
Alzheimer's so far is incurable. So why is it important to be able to detect it?
Well, for several reasons. So we have medicines today that treat the symptoms of the disease. So you'd like to be able to pick up the disease as soon as possible as you can start someone on an available medicine. But more importantly, in order to develop new therapies, we need to be able to identify people at the earliest possible stages.
Currently, the disease is detected through spinal taps or PET scans, which are invasive, expensive, and not readily available. The developers of the eye test say it can predict the onset of Alzheimer's 15 to 20 years before clinical diagnosis. The full study, involving 200 subjects, is expected to be completed later this year.
The people of Cleveland are gaining new confidence this weekend, and they have more than returning NBA star LeBron James to thank. Dean Reynolds is there.
In Brazil for the World Cup, the toast of Cleveland reflected on his decision to return.
I think it's an exciting time for myself. You know, it's a place that I'll, be home, be able to represent for the family and my friends and those fans.
LeBron James will be moving back to a city that's a far cry from what was once called the Mistake by the Lake, a post-industrial backwater where the polluted river occasionally caught fire. Remember that Randy Newman song?
Burn out, Red River, burn out.
Did it hurt? It hurt the pride of the city, undoubtedly.
Mark Namick is a columnist for the Cleveland Plain Dealer who says the bad days are long gone.
Cleveland outgrew the joke before the rest of the world has discovered, as they have this week.
Cleveland is now attracting people into its once shop-worn downtown. 12,500 newcomers at last count, occupying some of the 40 existing buildings turned into apartments. Joe Marinucci is president of the Downtown Cleveland Alliance.
We're in the midst of about a $4.5 billion investment cycle. Over the last 2.5 years, we've seen significant major investments occur in downtown.
Marinucci says the return of LeBron James will accelerate the growth already boosted by the Browns' signing of Heisman Trophy winner Johnny Manziel and the Republican Party's decision to hold its convention here in 2016.
He'll fill hotel rooms, he'll put seats in restaurants, he'll animate downtown in a way that we've not seen in quite some time. So from our perspective, it's a great opportunity, and it feels good to be a Clevelander today.
Much better than when Newman sang about it.
Cleveland, city of light, city of magic.
He was mocking the town, of course, but it may well be that way.
Well, at least this week, I think that song would have a new meaning.
One look at the faces of the fans here confirms that.
Get right to Red News, Blue News, my weekly look at how partisan media portray stories in ways that will make your head spin. And then, of course, I try to unspin it. This week it is immigration, such a contentious issue and such an emotional one. If you've watched a lot of the coverage, you've probably noticed a lot of tugging at the heartstrings, particularly by Democrats. So let's start with Blue News, with two congressional Democrats on MSNBC.
We have to remember that these are human beings and that these are kids, and show the compassion that we should for that.
Visuals are powerful. People love children. As much as there may be concern and a lot of emotions, I can tell you that your heart wrenches when you see the children.
The contrast could not be more vivid between those sound bites and these Red News sound bites I'm about to show you. Check these out. These are two Fox News commentators from earlier this week.
The federal government is covering up the extent of the health crisis. They say kids have scabies. They also say they have chickenpox and an all-out epidemic of lice so severe, they say the bugs can be seen crawling down the faces of the children.
There's a danger with the types of minors who are coming here. MS-13 gang members are minors, and now we're also seeing these dangerous people bringing drugs into the country who aren't being watched by Border Patrol.
Now keep what they said in mind and take a look at this protester. This is also a clip from Fox News. I noticed it on Hannity's show. As you listen to this, ask yourself, where do you think she heard about the lice? Where do you think she heard about the scabies?
They're coming in here, they're coming with lice and scabies and leprosy, I hear, and they're going to bring that to my hometown, and they're going to give it to my little brother, and they're going to give it to my best friend's son? I don't think so.
You can see the feedback loop right there between what news outlets tell us and what we believe, what we then worry about, what we then fear. So if you're on the left, you might believe there's a Red News effort to dehumanize these desperate immigrants, to portray them as unworthy of our help. And if you're on the right, you may believe there's a Blue News effort to discredit, to demonize opponents of immigration. Here's what Bill O'Reilly said about that.
Some on the left believe that the USA should accept all so-called refugees, all of them. And if you oppose that philosophy, you are inhumane, uncaring, unchristian, and so on. The demonization of opposition has been effective for the left, spurred on by asympathetic media.
You know, right now this topic is topping the news agenda. It kind of feels like immigration is the story of the summer. But how long will it really last? Let's end on this soundbite from Bill Burton, who's very worried it will not last very long at all.
It is a real crisis, and children are at the center of it. And the thing that's so sad about it is that because of this media environment, even though we're talking about it right now, and it's a big deal, and it's right in the president's face, and in 2 weeks, I promise you, we will not be having this conversation anymore. And so immigration comes and goes as an issue, but Republicans haven't had to pay any meaningful price because the media environment cycles through things so quickly that, you know, they're not getting tagged for
some media outlets are very intent on covering this issue 365 days a year. I'm not going to name names.
Oh, go ahead. Name names, Alex. All news outlets of all colors and all stripes should stay on the immigration beat and not let Bill Burton be right about the media's tendency to move on to some other hot topic.
Returning to London in the iconic shadow of Tower Bridge, Vicky Song aboard the Qingdao brings to a close a journey of 40,000 miles. Along with her crew, she's crossed the world's biggest and most remote oceans. With cheering crowds on either side, the Qingdao ended an epic adventure.
And this
she is. After that marathon trip around the world, it's Qingdao back to where she started nearly 11 months ago. In all, 12 boats made the journey, with many crewing for just a single leg. To put Vicky's triumph into perspective, more people have climbed Mount Everest than have sailed around the world.
Vicky, how do you feel?
Very, very excited this moment. We're back to the times. It feels everything so familiar. It feels like we just left. But when looking back, what happened in the 10 months, all the wind, all the crazy wind, the massive wind, all the crazy sailing, yeah.
It was 40,000 miles. I mean, that was quite a journey, wasn't it?
Yes.
Were there any times you thought, oh no, I can't go on?
Oh yeah, more than once. Thinking, what the hell I'm doing here? Can I really get over this? Can I get off this wet thing away from me, please? Can I stop the heat rush, please?
And was it actually hard work all the way, or were there times you could sit on the deck and just enjoy yourself?
Well, you got legs that's much easier. You got legs that's really, really tough, like Southern Ocean, Sydney Hobart race, from Singapore to Qingdao, that was really tough. Even the Pacific is tough. But you also got like a really nice one, like down the Caribbean Sea, that was nice sailing.
While at sea, Vicky experienced storms and giant waves. Qingdao, China's home of sailing, holds a unique place in this competition. Not only were all the craft made there, but it's the only city to have competed in every event since the race began 17 years ago. And Vicky is the toast of the town.
This is the first time we've had a woman sail the whole race right around the world. So we're really proud of her achievement, and we're delighted to be here for her return.
Vicky herself says she's returned a tougher, stronger person.
In a meeting with Greek President Karolos Papoulias, the Chinese president said that both their countries have unique cultures that have had a profound impact on human civilization, and China hopes to increase cultural exchanges with Greece. Xi Jinping also said the Chinese government encourages Chinese enterprises to invest in Greece and improve management of major projects, such as the jointly operated Piraeus port. Papoulias said Greece stands ready to step up cooperation with China and actively participate in China's initiatives of building a Silk Road economic belt and a 21st century maritime Silk Road. He also agreed to expand cooperation in maritime affairs and infrastructure building and welcome Chinese enterprises to invest in the country. Meeting with Greek Prime Minister Antonis Samaras, Xi Jinping pledged continued Chinese support for Greece on its sovereign debt issues and efforts to promote economic recovery. He voiced support for Chinese companies to actively participate in the technical renovation of Greek railways. Samaras thanked China for its assistance in Greece's response to its sovereign debt crisis. He also said his country will expand cooperation in communication, energy, environmental protection, technological innovation, and modern logistics.
Tears in Gaza City for those killed following an Israeli airstrike. At least 18 people died Saturday when the attack struck the home of a police chief and nearby mosque. Several others were injured. The Israeli offensive now in its 6th day, with the military for the first time briefly deploying ground troops inside the Gaza Strip on Sunday. Israeli officials say they're acting in self-defense, completing more than 1,300 airstrikes in the past week, with Palestinian militants launching more than 800 rockets against Israel. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu pointing the blame at the Islamic militant group Hamas.
Who is hiding in mosques? Hamas. Who puts weapons arsenals beneath hospitals? Hamas. Who puts headquarters in residential areas or near primary schools? Hamas. Hamas is using the residents of Gaza as human shields.
More than 160 Palestinians have been killed in the widening offensive. In northern Gaza, Palestinians fleeing their homes after the Israeli Air Force dropped leaflets warning of an upcoming campaign. Some of those able to leave, Palestinian Americans.
Well, basically you don't sleep at night. You are worried about, what's going to happen next, if it's going to be anything around your area. You don't, electricity comes and goes.
In Israel, few casualties with protection from its defense system known as the Iron Dome.
Got to make a living, and we're not going to stop our life because a couple of our rockets are anyway intercepted on their way in.
Neither Hamas nor Israel has shown any sign of moving toward a ceasefire.
Of Hong Kong, every single one of us here, and more in the homes, strongly condemn Israel's illegal actions and the U.S. support. And we ask you, we humbly ask you, as citizens of Hong Kong, to join us in opposition to the crimes against humanity, which are currently being carried out in Palestine.
Je rappelle que le logo fait maison, ça sera une casserole avec.
The fait maison or homemade logo will be a saucepan with a roof over it. The restaurants that are able to use this logo will be those who make all the elements of their meals themselves. They receive the raw ingredients every day or once a week and prepare everything on site.
Des produits bruts. On reçoit 83 millions de touristes chaque année, et sur ces 83 millions, vous en avez.
We get 83 million tourists each year, and of those 83 million, 40% come to France for the restaurants. Sometimes they leave disappointed because they imagine cuisine which is like what they see on television by great chefs who we highly respect, but who effectively idealize the idea of French cuisine. And so I think that this seal of approval, which is very, very important, will help us get rid of our gradual decline in comparison to other countries, which have singled out real restaurants from those who do things differently.
De ceux qui faisaient autrement.
No, I'm going to try that.
Germany wins its fourth World Cup title with a 1-0 victory over Argentina. The winning goal came in the 113th minute. Mario Götze, who wasn't born when West Germany beat Argentina in the 1990 final, controlled a cross with his chest in extra time and in one fluid motion volleyed the ball past Argentina's goalkeeper and inside the far post from 5 yards out. Argentina's star Lionel Messi, in the biggest game of his career, came up short. He threatened intermittently throughout the match, but was effectively neutralized for long stretches. Messi's last chance to tie up the match with a free kick in the 120th minute went well high. Argentina had not been back in the final since that 1990 loss and has now been beaten by Germany in the last 3 World Cups. It's Germany's first World Cup win as a united country, having won as West Germany in 1954, 1974, and 1990.
Finally, tonight there's a saying in the culinary world that people eat with their eyes first. It's a thought many of today's cell phone-centric diners would eagerly endorse. Here's Bill Plant.
When Chef R.J. Cooper opened Rogue 24 3 years ago, he made diners sign a contract promising to leave their camera phones at home.
I was very, very anti-photographs, cell phones. Don't bring the cell phone in the restaurant.
He worried that it would distract other customers. He also worried how some of his dishes might look. Is flavor more important than appearance?
Oh, absolutely. I've put out some ugly food. I mean, really ugly food, but the flavors have been fantastic.
But the "hey, look what I'm having" post of restaurant dishes has become such an integral part of dining out that Cooper decided to lift the ban.
We love our guests. We need our guests to produce our craft. So we need to be able to adapt to the guests' needs as well.
The images of the restaurants make it around the internet at lightning fast speed, and so everybody sees these pretty dishes and wants to emulate them.
Does it come at the expense of the food on the plate?
Sometimes.
Washington Post food editor Joe Yonan says some chefs are concentrating too much on how the dish looks.
There's so much tweezer garnishing happening after the food is cooked that it's not hot anymore by the time it reaches your table. But I think we diners have something to do with that too, because the dishes come to the table and nobody can touch anything because everybody has to take a picture first.
Midwood Place chef Cedric Montpellier says foodography can be inspiring.
I am influenced too by Instagram, all the pictures I see online.
and I'm using them. I want to be part of the movement.
So long as kitchens keep their priorities straight.
If the guests in the end feel like you have too much shishi on the plate and not feel of consistency, he will not come back. Maybe he will take a beautiful picture, but he will say to his friend, you know, the food looks better than it tastes.
But the internet has a seemingly insatiable appetite, which means restaurants have to find a balance.
Food always first. Guests always first, you know. And if the guests want to take picture, well, go take picture as much as you want. I don't mind.
The balance between food that satisfies and meals ready to tweet.